This video tutorial will help you identify effective formative assessment practices. It is essential that educators understand what formative assessment is and the characteristics of effective formative assessment practices. The formative assessment process is deliberate and embedded in the teaching and learning cycle and has the power to transform professional practice, student learning, and improve outcomes. Because feedback from formative practices is used to adjust teaching strategies and uncover student misconceptions in the moment, it can yield the highest gains in student achievement. High-quality formative practices should drive the teaching and learning process. Therefore, it is important that we properly identify what makes the formative assessment process both strategic and effective. A quick note about terminology. We use the terms formative assessment process and formative practices in lieu of the term formative assessments because the strategic use of formative practices are not test events, but rather an instructional process. Formative assessment or formative practices are teacher techniques designed to quickly inform instruction by providing specific and immediate feedback through daily, ongoing instructional strategies that are student and classroom-centered, and that answer what comes next for student learning. Teachers are already using formative practices within their instruction. In order to maximize our impact and meet the needs of all students, formative practices need to embody these characteristics. Every formative practice must be designed by teachers, based on learning targets, and elicit evidence of student learning to shape the next instructional step. Formative feedback that identifies student strengths and misconceptions is data that teachers can use to create groupings, adjust instruction, and answer the question, what comes next for student learning? There are many types of formative practices. They range from the most basic quick check for understanding to ongoing dialogue between a student and teacher that is systematized through a conferencing process. The best formative practices are strategies designed by teachers and are based on specific learning targets derived from the Wisconsin academic standards. Students play a critical role in the formative assessment cycle. They should be involved from the beginning, understanding the learning targets and success criteria. Next, students should set personal learning goals and ask themselves, where am I going? The most critical component of student involvement is that they are a participant within the feedback process and can answer the question, where am I now? This could mean that a teacher and student talk about the outcomes of a quiz or classroom discussion, the student self-evaluates, or the student practices peer evaluation. High-quality formative feedback is specific, actionable, and immediate so the student can answer the question, how do I get from here to there? Let's take a look at some examples of formative assessment practices and see if they embody the critical characteristics that will ensure student success. In example 1, a middle school reading teacher is focusing on the learning target, I can identify the main idea of an informational text. She observes students practicing within small groups and provides them with immediate feedback, correcting any misconceptions. At the end of class, students highlight the main idea of 2 short passages as an exit ticket. The teacher uses the exit tickets to form small instructional groups. She will reteach the lesson to one group, providing specific feedback by conferring with each student as needed. In 2 other groups, she will provide feedback about student misconceptions regarding the main idea versus details. In the last group, she will extend the learning for proficient students with a similar activity using a more complex text. In every conference, the teacher provides each student with specific, actionable, and immediate feedback. On the second day, students create a personal learning goal and complete a second exit ticket as a recheck. And the formative assessment process continues based on individual learning needs. In this example, all the characteristics of effective formative practices can be seen. It was designed by the teacher with a clear learning target. The teacher observed student conversations, allowing student voice, and gathered insight into their learning. And she elicited evidence of student learning through the exit ticket. The students were involved by setting personal learning goals, conferencing with their teacher, and working in peer groups, all resulting in the data being used to create small groups based on student skill levels, and the teacher providing specific, actionable, and immediate feedback. In our next example, high school algebra students are working on the learning target, I can write and solve linear equations, in small groups using handheld whiteboards. The teacher notices that although all groups have written the correct linear equation, a common mistake has arisen. Some groups have obtained a positive solution, while others have come up with a negative solution. He calls the students with a positive number into a small group, and after understanding the various misconceptions, he reteaches the skill. These students continue to write responses on whiteboards, and the teacher provides specific and immediate feedback to individual students. Based on his observations, the teacher determines 3 students are not ready to move on and instead will practice a set of foundational skills. When the students are ready to show proficiency, they will demonstrate their thinking process on the whiteboard so the teacher can recheck student understanding. In this example, again, we see that the formative practice was based on the specific learning target, designed by the teacher, and used naturally within instruction. Observations of student work elicited real-time evidence, allowing for small group reteaching. The teacher provided specific, actionable, and immediate feedback to students. In a third example, science students are focusing on the learning target, I can identify all 12 major muscle groups. After each lesson is completed, students take a quick online quiz that provides immediate feedback to each student, showing the number of correct answers on their quiz. The teacher tells the students to use these quizzes to study for the end of the unit summative assessment. In this example, the formative practice was based on a specific learning target, designed by the teacher, and elicited evidence of student learning, but he did not use the data to adjust and inform his instruction. Nor did the teacher provide specific or actionable feedback by discussing the quiz results with his students. The teacher did not follow up with students who scored poorly and did not follow up with those who did well to know if they truly mastered the learning target or simply memorized the content. The quiz results don't tell the teacher anything about the kids who need extension activities or what the next instructional step is with the proficient kids. They were not offered feedback that personalizes instruction. Please remember that to be effective, every formative practice must be designed by teachers, based on learning targets, and elicit evidence of student learning to shape the next instructional step. The formative assessment process should always provide specific, actionable, and immediate feedback about student strengths and misconceptions. And lastly, teachers should use the data to create groupings, adjust instruction, and answer the question, what comes next for student learning? For more information on formative practices and to see the process in action, check out these videos. If you have any questions about formative practices or strategic assessment systems in Wisconsin, please contact Lauren Zelmer with the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction.